Okay, so let's unpack this. Hearing the word Ebola in the news is, well, it's like smelling smoke in a crowded theater.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Do you panic or do you look for the fire exit signs? Today, we are mapping out those fire exits for you.
We definitely are.
We are looking at a stack of recent CDC and WHO guidelines, along with some really good frontline reporting from India Today and the Indian Express. We're trying to figure out how a mild body ache in Bengaluru basically triggered this massive, almost invisible public health firewall.
Yeah, because when you see headlines about isolation wards and, deadly viruses, it is incredibly easy to feel overwhelmed.
So easy.
The human brain is just naturally hardwired to react to threats. And a virus that we associate with such high mortality automatically triggers that deep primal alarm bell.
Right, it's pure panic.
Exactly. But when we actually break down the facts, we move from fear to an understanding of how the system actually operates. We are going to examine the specific strain of Ebola that's currently triggering these global alarms and decode exactly how India is building this multi-layered defense system at its entry points to keep you safe.
I love that. Let's start with the smoke I mentioned earlier. The immediate local scares that put the nation's health apparatus on absolute high alert.
The first one was in Bengaluru, right?
Right. On May 23rd, a 28-year-old Ugandan woman arrived in the city from Kampala. She was staying at the Royal Ace Boutique Hotel, and she developed mild body aches,
Just mild ache.
just that single symptom. And based on that, boom, she was immediately moved to a state-run isolation facility. They drew blood, took swabs, and sent them straight to the ICMR National Institute of Virology in Tune.
Which is the standard high alert protocol.
Yeah, and thankfully the initial test came back negative. Though protocol dictates she faces a mandatory 48-hour repeat test before she can even be considered for discharge.
And around that same time, a secondary incident unfolded on the other side of the country.
Right, in Gujarat.
Yeah, a 37-year-old man arrived in Vadodara. He had transited through Mumbai, but his travel history included both Africa and Bangladesh.
And what were his symptoms?
He exhibited a fever and a cold, and the response was just as swift. He was completely isolated, but they actually cast the net even wider. The doctor who initially treated him, along with two of his associates, were all placed under observation in an isolation ward.
See, I have to push back here on behalf of anyone listening. If you are stepping off a 14-hour travel itinerary with a headache and jet lag, getting shoved into an isolation ward feels like a massive overreaction.
Oh, it sounds intense for sure.
People get off long-haul international flights with body aches literally all the time. It's, dehydration, bad airplane seats, exhaustion. It sounds like treating a paper cut with a tourniquet. Why the massive overreaction?
Well, if we were dealing with a standard pathogen, it would absolutely be an overreaction. But these false alarms serve as live fire stress tests for our medical infrastructure.
Live fire stress tests. I like that.
Yeah, because we often talk about pandemic preparedness in the abstract, looking at white papers and running theoretical tabletop exercises. But these two incidents demonstrate the system functioning in reality.
So it's zero tolerance.
The threshold for intervention right now is zero. There is absolutely no tolerance for risk, and that's because of what triggered this heightened state of alert in the first place.
Right. Looking at the timeline in the WHO reports, that trigger happened on May 17th, 2026.
Yeah, that was the big one.
The World Health Organization officially declared the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC, and Uganda to be a public health emergency of international concern, a PHEIC.
Which is the absolute highest level of alarm the WHO can sound.
It is the international signal to just pull every single lever.
And shortly after that WHO announcement, the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention followed suit, declaring it a public health emergency of continental security.
Wow.
Because the epidemiological numbers driving this are deeply concerning. As of mid-May, the reporting showed 528 suspected cases and 132 deaths across Congo and Uganda.
And drilling down into the confirmed cases in the sources, we are looking at 51 confirmed in Congo, specifically concentrated in the conflict-torn northern provinces of Ituri and North Kivu.
Right.
Plus, there are 2 confirmed cases right in Kampala, Uganda's capital, including 1 death among individuals who had traveled from Congo. So the virus isn't just isolated in remote areas anymore.
Exactly. It's moving through major, highly connected urban transit hubs. Kampala is a massive city with a vast international footprint.
Which explains the Bengaluru connection.
It does. But the real reason for the extreme response, the reason a mild body ache gets you an escort to an isolation ward, is the specific biological culprit we're dealing with.
Okay, break that down for us.
This outbreak is being driven by the Bunda extremely. You have to deploy the vaccine in an area where the virus is naturally circulating to see if it actually provides protection. Because Bundibugyo outbreaks have been rarer, the pharmaceutical pipeline essentially just stalled.
So it's like we have this highly effective wanted poster for the Zaire strain.
I like that analogy.
We've distributed that wanted poster to the immune system, so the immune system's cops know exactly who to look for and how to fight them. But the Bundibugyo strain has a completely different face, and our immune system is just flying blind.
Completely blind.
We have 0 approved vaccines and 0 specific approved treatments to cure it.
Yep. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are dealing with a highly fatal viral hemorrhagic fever with no pharmaceutical cheat code.
So it's like a deadly software virus, but our usual antivirus update hasn't even been coded for this specific variant yet. No wonder they're just pulling the plug on the router.
That is exactly why health officials are not taking any chances. We are forced to fight it using the most ancient, fundamental tools of public health, which are isolation, quarantine, and aggressive contact tracing. When you have no cure, prevention is literally your only strategy.
But if there is no vaccine, our only defense is catching it early.
Yeah.
And looking at these CDC guidelines, catching it early seems biologically impossible because of how this virus actually behaves in the human body.
It is incredibly difficult.
The incubation period for Ebola disease, the time between when you are exposed to the virus and when you first start showing symptoms is anywhere from 2 to 21 days.
Up to 21 days.
That is wild. Even though the average is usually around 8 to 10 days, that 3-week maximum window is staggering.
That 21-day window is the diagnostic nightmare of this specific virus, particularly at international borders. And when the symptoms finally do appear, they don't start with the dramatic, severe signs we associate with, like, movies about outbreaks.
Right, no bleeding from the eyes on day 1.
No. The disease begins with what clinicians call the dry phase.
And scanning the symptoms for the dry phase, it's fever, severe headache, aches and pains in the muscles and joints, weakness, a sore throat. I mean, that doesn't sound like Ebola.
No, it doesn't.
That sounds like the flu. It perfectly explains the Ugandan traveler in Bengaluru. She had a mild body ache, which is a textbook dry symptom.
Exactly. This raises an important question. How do you screen for deadly virus when it arrives looking exactly like a standard traveler's cold?
You almost can't.
As the CDC points out, the dry phase of Ebola perfectly mimics incredibly common endemic infections like malaria, typhoid fever, influenza, or even just bacterial pneumonia.
Wow.
So without a highly specialized molecular blood test, a frontline doctor cannot tell the difference just by looking at a patient in a clinic.
But if they don't catch it in that dry phase, things escalate with terrifying speed. Usually after 4 to 5 days of illness, the virus triggers the wet phase.
And that's when it gets severe.
Yeah, this is characterized by severe gastrointestinal symptoms, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, and then the hallmark of viral hemorrhagic fevers, unexplained bleeding. The reports note the virus attacks the endothelial cells lining the blood vessels.
Yeah, think of endothelial cells as the mortar holding the bricks of your blood vessels together.
Okay.
They're the crucial lining that keeps your circulatory system intact and functioning. When the virus attacks and destroys that mortar, the blood vessels literally start to leak.
That is horrifying.
The body's fluid balance is thrown into total chaos, leading to a catastrophic drop in blood pressure and severely impaired kidney and liver function. And the immune system goes into such massive overdrive trying to fight the virus that it essentially damages the body's own organs of the crossfire.
But even for those who pull through, and we should emphasize that people absolutely do survive this, the battle isn't over.
Not at all.
Surviving the acute infection is a monumental victory, but the sources detail some harrowing long-term complications. Survivors often face a constellation of severe ongoing health issues, from profound tiredness to chronic muscle and joint pain.
The post-viral syndrome is intense.
Yeah, and the vision problems highlighted in the CDC report are particularly striking. Blurry vision, pain, redness, and severe light sensitivity. Why does it affect the eyes so much?
Because the virus has an incredibly insidious survival mechanism. It can linger in what we call immunologically privileged sites in the body long after it has been cleared from the bloodstream.
Immunologically privileged sites.
Yeah. Think of these privileged sites as VIP rooms in the body where the immune system's bouncers aren't allowed to enter.
Oh, interesting.
The eyes, the central nervous system, and the tests are examples. Because the immune response in these areas is naturally muted to prevent inflammation from damaging really delicate tissues, the virus can essentially hide out in these safe houses.
Wow, so it just camps out there.
Exactly. And survivors also report memory loss, hearing issues, hair loss, and incredibly high rates of post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression. The physical and psychological toll is just staggering.
So here's where it gets really interesting, and here's a logical loophole that makes this entire situation so complex.
What's that?
If the symptoms take up to 21 days to show, someone could be exposed in Kampala, get on a plane a week later feeling perfectly fine, breeze through an airport thermal scanner with a completely normal body temperature, land in India, and go about their life for another 10 days before ever feeling a single ache or pain.
That is the nightmare scenario.
How do we stop a biological Trojan horse?
That is the exact logistical puzzle the Indian government is currently trying to solve. You cannot stop a virus with an incubation period of 21 days just by pointing a thermometer at someone's forehead at the arrivals gate.
Right, the bouncer at the door isn't enough.
You need a defense-in-depth strategy. You need multiple overlapping layers of security to create an airtight net.
And based on the directives from the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, the DGCA, and the Ministry of Health, India has deployed a very specific multi-layered protocol to catch that Trojan horse.
Yes, they have.
It actually starts before the plane even lands. The DGCA has mandated that airlines must broadcast specific health announcements during flights.
Right, preemptive education.
Exactly. They are educating passengers about the symptoms, fever, weakness, muscle pain, sore throat, and urging them to self-report to the crew immediately if they feel ill midair.
But the real mechanism of tracking happens through paperwork before deboarding. Every single passenger originating from or transiting through an Ebola-affected country has to fill out a self-declaration form, or SDF.
So they're tracking movements before you even hit customs.
Exactly. They have to meticulously outline their travel history for the past 21 days. The authorities need to know if you have been in a high-risk zone during that crucial incubation window.
That makes sense.
In a globalized world where millions of people are moving constantly, establishing a verifiable paper trail is really the only way to retrace the steps of a potential outbreak.
Then we move to the next layer, the airport itself. Thermal scanners are active. And to give a sense of the sheer scale and complexity of this operation, let's look at Pune's International Airport.
A great example.
They don't even have direct flights to the affected African nations, yet health authorities commenced full Ebola screening there.
And they are screening there because of the reality of transit hubs. A passenger might start their journey in Congo, fly to Dubai or Bangkok, and then connect to Pune.
Right, people don't just fly direct.
Trying to trace those fragmented itineraries is a logistical nightmare. The sources note that Pune alone screens around 150 international passengers daily arriving from these transit points.
And they are actively finding people to test based on this net. So far, 23 passengers with recent travel links to Ebola-affected countries have been identified as high risk and screened across Maharashtra, 1 in Pune and 22 in Mumbai.
And the test results.
The good news is that all 23 have tested negative.
Which is fantastic. But the system doesn't stop at the airport doors, because the thermal scanner only catches people who are actively feverish at that exact moment.
Right, the Trojan horses still get through.
So the third, and perhaps most crucial layer of the fortress, is in the community. This is the 21-day self-monitoring travel advisory issued by state health departments, like the comprehensive set of guidelines out of Karnataka.
What does that entail exactly?
If you arrive from an affected region and pass the airport screening, you are legally mandated to monitor your own health for 3 weeks. If any of those dry symptoms develop, you must report to the nearest designated health facility immediately.
And if that happens, there is a dedicated safety net waiting. We aren't just relying on local neighborhood clinics to figure it out and risk exposing their regular patients.
No, absolutely not.
Rapid response teams, or RRTs, are on high alert. The government has locked and loaded specific hospitals to handle these exact scenarios. The logistics are incredibly specific.
Like in Bengaluru.
Yeah, in Bengaluru, they have designated the Rajiv Gandhi Institute of Chest Diseases strictly as the isolation center. Meanwhile, the Epidemic Diseases Hospital is set up as the quarantine and treatment facility.
And they have instituted the exact same structural division down in Mangaluru.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The Srinivas Port Hospital is identified as the quarantine center, and the Wenlock District Hospital is the isolation and treatment facility.
That's a lot of coordination.
They have even arranged dedicated ambulance services just for the safe transport of suspected patients. They are ensuring that someone who develops a fever on day 15 of their incubation period isn't taking an Uber, a rickshaw, or a crowded bus to get to the hospital.
So what does this all mean? It is the creation of a rigid chain of custody. It's like having a bouncer at the door of a club, checking IDs. That's the thermal scanners and the declaration forms.
I like that.
But because you know someone might have slipped a fake ID past the bouncer, you also have undercover security inside the club monitoring anyone who starts acting suspicious hours later.
That is the perfect analogy.
That is the 21-day community monitoring and the rapid response teams. And the isolation hospitals are the holding rooms where the situation is contained away from the general public.
Exactly. The bouncer stops the obvious, immediate threats at the border. But the internal security catches the Trojan horses that hatch days later. It ensures that from the moment a traveler feels a symptom, they are funneled out of the general population and into a highly controlled, biologically secure environment without breaking the chain.
The bottom line from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare is reassuring, but it definitely requires vigilance. As of right now, there are currently 0 confirmed cases of the Bundybergyo strain of Ebola in India.
0 confirmed cases.
Oh.
The system has been actively tested by false alarms, and it has worked as intended.
It really has.
The Ugandan traveler in Bengaluru was isolated, tested, and cleared. The travelers in Maharashtra were tracked, screened, and found negative. The architecture of the firewall is holding.
But the advisory remains firm. The government strongly advises all citizens to avoid non-essential travel to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Uganda, and South Sudan until further notice.
A very sensible precaution.
Definitely. And if you or a loved one must travel, the key takeaway is not blind panic, it is hyper-awareness. Respecting that 21-day self-monitoring window is a most vital tool in the entire public health arsenal.
Because our global health security fundamentally relies on individual participation. The advanced molecular testing, the thermal scanners, the multi-million-dollar isolation wards, they all depend on individuals acting responsibly when they feel that first hint of a fever.
And that actually leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
The system worked this time. The 28-year-old Ugandan woman and the 37-year-old man in Gujarat were intercepted quickly because they interacted with formal systems.
Right, they stayed at a registered hotel, they sought out a doctor.
Exactly. They created a visible footprint that the rapid response teams could actually track. But in a world where gig economy travel, backpacking, and informal medical advice on the internet are constantly on the rise, what happens if the next Trojan horse traveler decides to just ride out their mild body ache in a crowded, unregulated hostel with a handful of over-the-counter painkillers?
That is a terrifying vulnerability.
For all our defense matrices and high-tech scanners, how reliant is our entire global health net on the simple, individual honesty of a single, tired traveler who just wants to sleep off a fever?
It's a question we all need to be thinking about.
It really is. Keep your eyes open, stay informed, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.